It's not the destination, but the journey that matters. That is a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And then there's a Chinese proverb that says, the journey is the reward. And my guest today, Jamie Gantt, is going to speak about be present, embrace your journey. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Lois. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So I am Lois, the host of Finding Your Feet After Failure, and I wish to welcome Jamie to the podcast today. So Jamie Gantt is a passionate advocate for holistic well-being and personal transformation. As the founder of Radically Alive Coaching, Jamie helps women unlock their true potential through a unique blend of self-care, mindfulness, and practical strategies for success. With a master's degree in psychology and a background in corporate leadership, Jamie's mission is to empower others to achieve 10 times productivity and fulfillment whilst maintaining balance and avoiding burnout. Jamie's signature program, Radiate, has inspired many to live with passion, purpose, and radical authenticity. Wow, what is radical authenticity?
Yeah, radical authenticity. When I think about the word radical, I've always thought it is a little bit of pushing the envelope, going a little bit against the grain. But actually, I once looked it up, the word radical, and it's actually a scientific term that refers to atoms collectively coming together and finding a balance. And I thought that that was quite interesting. And so when I think of that now, I think of the almost like perfect connection. So I think about it when I think of things like radical acceptance, which is something from psychology, but radical authenticity, it just means overall the perfect, authentic you, the only way you could possibly be because everything is perfectly aligned as it should be.
So, how can you be authentically you when you've made a mistake or you've had a failure?
Oh, that is such a great question. You know what? I really believe the best way to be authentic when making mistakes or when failing is to just own it. There's this idea that I've learned actually from studying mindfulness, especially meditation and just getting into present moment awareness. But this idea that you just surrender to what is. And so if a mistake is made, I think often what we do is we start thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done it this way. I should have made this decision. Or we start comparing ourselves. This person wouldn't have made that mistake. I should have done what they did. Or this person advised me against this and I didn't listen. I should have listened to them. And all of these different things. But I think that there's such a beautiful opportunity when a mistake is made to just realize that actually what's happened is you made a decision, an outcome came from that decision, and it just wasn't the one you wanted. So you could just surrender to the fact that, okay, this is not what I was going for. And now you can really think to yourself, like, was I in alignment with myself when I made this decision? Am I really fully owning this outcome? Is it really fully mine? Or am I putting it on someone else? Am I trying to say, oh, this is only a mistake because this person or this event or this happened? So just own it and surrender to what is and find your way forward, you know?
And to know that at the time you made the best decision based on the knowledge you had when you made that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so true.
So, you also spoke about collectively coming together.
Yeah.
So, collectively coming together and getting opinions from other people and then making the decision that leads you in the wrong path. How do you deal with that?
Mm. So, you know what? I have this thing. I don't know that there is a wrong path. I really believe that everything we do, somehow or another, we're going to get on the path that we're meant to be on. So I think taking advice from people is never really a bad thing, because sometimes other people might have been on a journey and they're a little bit further than me. And maybe they know things that I don't know. Maybe they could see things that I can't see. But I think what happens is when we start getting into this idea of right and wrong, especially when it comes to like a life path or our journey, um, I don't think that it, I think it just puts us in a place where we're just gonna, we're gonna lose touch with our intuition, with our self trust, with our self belief, with our self confidence. I think that no matter what, at the end of the day, even if it's not the way that we wanted to go, even if it's not in our best interest to continue in a certain direction, doesn't necessarily make it wrong. I think it just makes it no longer the direction we need, you know?
So where have you gone no wronger? What mistakes, what mistakes or failures have you made?
Oh, my goodness gracious. I feel like I could go on for hours. Let me think of, I can think of a little ones. So and it kind of is umbrellaed underneath bigger ones, but something that I am in constant development around is financial stability and financial health. It's something that I have never really quite gotten a grip on to a point where I'm comfortable. And I can remember one of my first mistakes that I made financially. I was in my early 20s, and if you can't tell from my accent, I'm from the US. So I was living in the US. I'm in my early 20s, living on my own, and I found myself a little bit financially strapped. And I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? I want to go do this thing and that thing, and I still have to pay my rent and. And just down the street from me was this place that gave you cash advance loans. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds great. I'll just take out this money and I can pay for all my bills and I'll pay them back next week. And this is back in the day when checks were still a thing. So I could just post date a check, hand that to them, and then I would just pay a fee later when I paid them back. No big deal. Well, that's not exactly how it worked. I ended up getting myself caught into a 3-year loop of every paycheck, paying it back, and then getting another advance, and then doing it over and over and over again. And at one point, I even had gone to a second cash advance place to get a cash advance to pay the first cash advance, and then on and so on and so on. So it was a terrible trap. It was not where I wanted to be. And it certainly put a big giant dent in my financial growth for a very long time. Yeah. So that was a mistake.
So what was the lesson you learned from that?
So the lesson I learned from that at the time was, first of all, there's no easy outs. If the money is run out, it's not so simple as to just go, rob Peter to pay Paul, as it were. Um, and I also learned that what I ended up doing actually was I got help from one of my relatives. I got some financial assistance from my sister. And I learned at that point, not only is it not so simple that I have to actually pay attention to what I'm doing, but also that I have support and I can ask for help. And, when we have support systems in place, it's okay to ask for help. And I think that the only reason I started getting those loans in the first place was because I was too afraid to actually ask for help. And yeah, I think that was like a big eye opener for me, because when I spoke to my sister, she acted like it was nothing. She was just like, "Are you kidding me? I would have helped you with this a long time ago. It would have been a lot cheaper. What were you thinking?" And so it was actually really quite a life lesson that, we're not supposed to human by ourselves. We're supposed to do it with people. And help is there if you look and if you're willing to ask.
So it's that radically collectively coming together.
Yes, 100%.
And any other mistakes or failures?
Goodness me. I had, I don't know if I would call it a mistake, but definitely a failure. It was or we'll say it was an unwanted outcome. I actually just recently redesigned one of my online courses, which is my program Radiate. It used to actually be called Best Self Bootcamp. I've rebranded it. And I was running some webinars to pull in some visibility for this program. And so I was inviting people to come to this webinar so that I could talk to you about overcoming burnout and preventing burnout. And the intention was to bring people in to the program. And what I found was I spent a lot of money on advertising through social media, pulled in some people. I think I had roughly 200 people that had signed up. And when I went to run the webinar, first of all, I found out that my emails weren't working. And I only found this out because when I went to my first webinar, I showed up and I waited for all of these people who registered, and I waited and nobody was there. Nobody was there. And I was sitting there for 5 minutes, like, what happened? I had all these people sign up. What was going on? And I did a little bit of digging, and I found out that there was a technical issue with the way that I had set up my emails that were attached to my webinar registration. So no one ever even got the link. No one could show up. So that was quite that was just a few months ago. That was earlier this year. But lots of technical knowledge came from that. I learned how to check and make sure that my emails are working properly. I learned how to make sure even that they're not going directly to spam, which was a big part of the issue. A lot of them went to spam. So I figured that out. I made friends with a really lovely developer who lives in the Czech Republic, and he gave me a series of links that I can run things through to test them. So, I got my help, which is a lesson I learned a long time ago, but I also learned a lot of new technical stuff that I now can do that I couldn't do 6 months ago. So that was fun.
I would love to know how you avoid going to spam.
Yeah, I'll actually, you know what, Los, when we're done here, I'll send you a link. Because there's actually a link that you can run your emails through to test them and make sure that they're not going to be flagged as spam. I didn't know you could do that.
Sure. So you certainly learned a lesson. How did you find your feet? How did you recover from that particular situation?
Yeah. This was an interesting one because I found that I handled this a lot differently than I probably would have earlier in my life. But the first thing I did was I just walked away from it. Like I set things down. I was like immediately first when I realized no one was showing up, I was going into a bit of a panic. I was like, what happened? What's going on? What can I do? Like, this is a complete disaster. How am I going to move forward? How am I going to recover, etc. And so as I found myself in that spiral, I just stopped, closed my laptop, walked away, went and I sat in a quiet room and just felt it. That's the only way I could describe it. I just kind of let it go. There were some tears. There were, some not so kind words being shouted into the ether. I was just like, just letting myself feel it. Once I gave myself, it must have been probably like an hour, I think. I let myself feel it. And then I was like, okay, I need to figure something out. And then that's when I reached out and I started to try and get help. And then from there, I have a coach that I work with. And so I made an appointment and I chatted with her so that I could kind of just work through all of the the things that come up, because when stuff like this happens, and I feel like it's probably true for other people as well, when we make these mistakes, a lot of times like old beliefs might come up. Like I started thinking, I'm not good enough to do this. I don't have what it takes to run an online business. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. That's why they didn't come to my webinar. All of these different things that were kind of running through my head. And so I worked with my coach to kind of help me reframe that and kind of regroup and find my footing again. And so that was really helpful as well. And then I was able to kind of create an action plan and figure out a way forward from there.
And did you go back to the people that missed the webinar?
I did, and I sent them all replays. And from now, like now since then, it was such a boost to my email list. So now I get to provide value to all of these people on a regular basis because they get my newsletter and they get access to my free community and all of these different things. And so it was just a really great way to build my community, even though there was like this big mishap with the webinar, but they did get to eventually see what I had. And then now they're part of my community, which is beautiful.
How did you admit your mistake or apologize?
So what I did was I sent out an email to everyone. And so I have a little bit of like a cheeky sense of humor. And so I kind of sent like a humorous email, like, oh, the tech gremlins, you know how these tech gremlins can be. This is what happened. Deepest apologies if you missed it, but here's the game plan moving forward. And I kind of outlined like some new dates for a new live webinar, which some people did get to attend live, which was great. But I also gave the promise that if they didn't make it live, I would send the replay so that they would still have access to it, just to make sure that everyone at least had the opportunity, since they did register, to get access to it. But yeah, just apologizing and having a little bit of a sense of humor about it, because what else can we do but laugh at these things?
Well, you've given us a lot of tips already, in terms of how we can overcome, how we can find our feet, how we can correct our mistakes. Over and above what you've already said, have you anything else to advise people when they do make these mistakes?
um yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would say is just remember, at the end of the day, mistakes do not define you. Making a choice that doesn't go the way you want doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you less than. It just makes you human. And always know that whatever choice you make in any given moment, it can't be wrong, because you're following what makes the most sense to you at the time. And if you see something differently in retrospect through a different lens, fine, you can change things then. But where you're at right now, like yeah, you can't really go wrong when you're just being human. So there's nothing wrong with you.
Fabulous. I want to just summarize this a couple of things that you mentioned. That you must trust, you must have self-trust and self-confidence and go with your intuition. And as you said,
Mm,
at that time, you were looking at through that decision, you were looking at that decision through a specific lens, and it was the right decision at that time. So that's very important.
yeah,
The other thing you spoke about was asking for help, seeking that support, and finding a coach. So important to have somebody to just be your mirror, be a reflection, to give you guidance, and then obviously the support. So that's a lovely
yeah,
one. You also mentioned positive self-talk, having the mindset. So you need to develop that. And you also, what I did like was your sense of humor when you apologize. It's so important. Admit your mistake. We are human, as you just said. We make mistakes. It's what happens. and you need to admit it and always apologize. And if you can do it with humor, that's even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So going back to radical, you also spoke about balance. How do you create that balance?
You know, when it comes to balance, I think it's a little bit different for everyone. But what I find is when I think of balance, because I'm always thinking in terms of um my way of being, like kind of the way I'm moving through the world. I want to feel like I'm in balance. And sometimes that means, spending a little bit more time on my self-care rather than on work, or vice versa, or maybe spending a little bit more time recharging my social batteries, or maybe spending a little more time on my physical care, like different things like that. So but I think that it's always different. So like I'm trying to think of a good kind of picture to put in someone's head. So are you familiar with the wheel of life?
Mhm.
Okay. So we look at the wheel of life, and often people will kind of score themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 in all these different areas of our life, the social, emotional, health, et cetera, et cetera. And I think some people think that to be balanced, they all should have an equal score. But I don't think that's the case. I think what we need to have balance is kind of feeling internally if we are at peace. And if I feel at peace inside, then I know that I'm balanced. I might be putting, you know, 80% of my effort into my work this week. But if I feel at peace inside of me, then I'm balanced. And so it's more of a feeling. I think being balanced is a felt experience more so than it is a thought experience,
I
if that
like
makes
that.
sense.
That does. I like that because people talk about work-life balance, and you
Mhm.
don't have a work-life balance. You have a work-life integration. And
Yes.
sometimes work is more, it takes more of a priority, and other times life takes more of a priority. So it's integrating the two that they work together
Mm.
rather than in balance, because you can never have a perfect balance. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
uh,
Yeah.
and
No, I think that's so true. And that's something that I actually work a lot around with my clients, because burnout is a big part of the discussions I have with most people I work with. And there is this idea that, oh, it's because I have to go 50-50 or 80-20 or 60, like it's no, there's no magic formula. Everybody's different. And it is like, it's not about work-life balance. You know, it's just life.
yeah. And talking of burnout, burnout in a way is a type of failure because you're failing to get on and to succeed with your
Mm,
projects and your life. So, what advice can you give to people who are suffering from that failure of burnout?
mm. Oh, burnout is such a huge, um, it covers so much. So if someone is experiencing symptoms of burnout, which includes anxiety, finding yourself kind of getting snippy or short with people on a regular basis, finding a lack of focus, finding that you have no energy, all of these different things are part of burnout. If you find yourself stuck in burnout, immediately I would say get help, whether it's from a coach, whether it's seeing a therapist, whether it's just having a long chat with your boss about taking some time off so you can figure out what's going on. um, Immediately get help, because burnout can lead to so many other issues. It can lead to serious mental health problems. It can lead to physical problems. It can manifest as illness, disease, etc. It just get help immediately. And there's a lot of different tools and strategies that you can use. Me personally, I work with people a lot around mindfulness. So mindfulness, good self-care practices, putting things in place for yourself so that you can not only get through the burnout that you might be in, but also start preventing it. But don't let yourself stay in burnout. If you have any symptoms, even if it's early days and you're just starting to notice a little bit, like you're feeling at the end of the day, like, oh my God, I've had enough. I can't do it. Even if that's where you are, just find someone to start getting some help and start making some changes.
And how do you encourage people to ask for help? Because you yourself couldn't ask for help. How do you go
Mm.
about asking for help?
Oh, you know what? That is such a great question. If you are afraid to ask for help, maybe, oof, I would just offer you the reminder that asking for help to someone else is actually a gift. So there are a lot of people in the world who feel so good about themselves when they have the opportunity to help. And I think that's especially true of family members. If you have family that you can call on, I promise you, I can almost guarantee you that there's someone who would feel so over the moon to be given the opportunity to help. It is very much a gift. People enjoy being that person who's helpful. And if you don't believe me, think of the last time you helped someone and how good you felt to be able to be that person that they came to ask for advice, to ask for assistance in some way. Even something simple like, hey, could you hand me that? You're like, oh, yeah, sure. It feels great to be that person. So give someone else the gift of being able to help you.
Fabulous. That's really, it's so important that we give back and receive, and we know
Mm.
how to give back and to receive. So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
so. Any last words for our viewers?
Um, just remember to, take care of yourself and love yourself.
Well, that's a lot of golden nuggets in what you've shared with us today. So, how can people reach you?
Yeah, you can find me all over the socials. JamieGantt.coach is my handle. You can also find me at my website, radicallyalivecoaching.com. And yeah, you can reach out to me, DM me, send me an email, whatever you like. I'm here.
Okay, great. I'll put your link tree link into the description below so that people can find you. And
Brilliant.
I do recommend that you go and chat to Jamie. I think she's got lots of wisdom inside to share. So please do contact her. And please, you can contact me as well. I'll put my Calendly link below where you can have a 30-minute discussion on how you can find your feet after failure. So please do that. And I would love you to subscribe to this channel. And please do click on the various links. There's some fabulous interviews. There's some fabulous talks by interesting people with many, many nuggets, many tips and techniques on how to overcome, how to survive. So please do join my channel. The channel is Walking Without Skin, and I would love to see you all there. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us today, and go well.
Thanks so much.